This is When the Fuck Did I Become Old, the fun, edgy and unapologetically honest podcast about the experiences of aging, where, as the name suggests, nothing is off the table. And I'm your host, Jo Parker. And today I'm joined by someone who I actually would say is my heroine, Kate Thompson, the Hormone Geek. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you, Jo. What an introduction.
Oh, my goodness. Honestly, as my listeners know, I'm not sleeping, or I haven't been sleeping, and I came to you. But let's just wind it back a bit and then introduce yourself. You know, what do you do, Kate? And why do you do it?
Thank you, Jo. So I'm a hormone and nutrition specialist, and I had a varied journey, and I had 20 years in the city, and then realised the impact of nutrition had for me on fertility, on my own hormones, also my children's health.
Yeah.
And so I retrained. But I was retraining at the same time as going through perimenopause and also dealing with the whole hormone issues and trying to navigate that, seeing hormone specialists at the same time. And then I realized that all the kind of standard advice that was out there wasn't really working for me. So I started doing my own little bit of research and my own experimentation, I guess, on myself, because I had real problems with sleep. Like you.
Yeah.
Mine was slightly different. And I think that's the whole point as well about hormones and nutrition, is that everybody is different. And I think generally we have this kind of one size fits all, and that doesn't really work for us. So I'm really into that personalized service, really understanding how people feel and what those symptoms are trying to tell you, rather than just going treat a symptom. So my sleep was down to the fact that actually I had too much estrogen and not enough progesterone, and also the fact that my blood sugar was waking me up a lot in the night.
Okay.
So I think that's what we thought about with you, is that maybe it was your blood sugar was dropping at night, and that is why that was waking you up. But yours was a different story.
Mine was a different story. But before we get to me, so if I come to you, if I were, I have come to you, obviously we all know that, but if I were coming off the street and I was recommended to you, what would you do? How would you start the process with somebody?
Well, often people come and see me, I think in midlife, they come and want to talk about midlife weight gain.
Right.
And I often I see more women than men, because men really don't want to address any issues until it gets really bad.
Okay.
And I find that women often come to me about weight gain, and then as we start to kind of unravel that and we talk about other things going on, it may be that they've got bloating, it may be that they're waking up in the night, their energy's really low, they feel cranky, they've lost their confidence.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things going on. So often people work with me over a 12-week program, and we look at all of those symptoms, and rather than just treating the symptoms, we're trying to connect the dots of actually what's going on. Sometimes we do a hormone testing, again, like we did with you, and we did the Dutch test, which is a dried urine total comprehensive hormone test.
Right.
And I really like that test because our hormones can be all over the place in midlife, but also it's not just those sex hormones, but it's looking at our cortisol. And I know we're going to talk about that. But cortisol, there's a lot in the press. Everyone's talking about cortisol and high cortisol affecting weight. But often it can be low cortisol after a really long period of high cortisol.
Okay.
So depending on what sort of, whether or not actually we can kind of work out what's going on without needing the testing. But some people really like to see in black and white what's going on. So we can add the testing on as well.
Okay. So let's look at me then as a case history. I presented, I'm not sleeping was my main problem, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And a bit of hair loss.
Yes.
So talk us through what you did with me and what your conclusions were and why you gave me the Dutch test.
Okay. So actually what we did with you is I do a hormone and nutrition audit for people, which is a kind of just getting started. Yeah. And with that, I look at somebody's food diary and I look at somebody's kind of symptoms and their questionnaire. And I thought with you, maybe there was some cortisol going on because you were training quite a lot, but I could see that was kind of boosting your energy.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe because you were training late on in the evening, that was maybe impacting your sleep, and maybe there was some blood sugar going on. So I think you wore the blood sugar monitor.
I did.
And that wasn't your issue.
No.
And then we decided to do the Dutch test. And what we saw on that was your sex hormones, your HRT was looking great for you. Your estrogen was looking great. But what we found out was your cortisol was starting to really affect your neurotransmitters in your brain.
Yeah.
So that's the thing I think people often misunderstand is actually long-term cortisol. Cortisol is a great hormone. It's helps us with focus, helps us get out of sticky situations, helps us get work done. But long-term, like having your foot flat on that accelerator really can impact your health. And some people get into a sort of cycle where it kind of gets stuck, your foot flat on the accelerator. And I think that's what was happening with you.
Definitely.
And so that can lead to some kind of burnout. But actually, we often say burnout, but what does that sort of really mean? And what we noticed from your test is that your neurotransmitters in your brain were starting to get really low. So it was starting to affect your dopamine, which is like your joyful hormone.
Yeah.
And maybe your serotonin and feeling a little bit low.
Yeah, absolutely.
But your melatonin, which is our sleep hormone, was also really low. As we get older, our sleep hormone, that melatonin does, reduce. And that's why a lot of people want to take melatonin as a supplement.
Yeah.
But melatonin as a supplement is not as effective as our own melatonin. So supporting our body to make that melatonin ourselves can really help our sleep. The thing is, if cortisol is high when you go to bed, which is what was happening with you,
definitely,
is that we suppress our own natural melatonin production.
Right.
So what we've tried to do with you is we've looked at ways to try and sort of take your foot off the accelerator.
Yep.
So the evening training is hopefully gone.
So the evening training hasn't gone, but the evening high intensity training or any cardio has gone for sure. Yeah. So I have replaced that with the odd strength class and the odd yoga class.
Great. And what we've also done is use some supplements to help that as well, because after a while, that high cortisol can impact your neurotransmitters, but also what we were trying to avoid with you is kind of inflaming your brain.
Yeah.
And that is one of the things that the Dutch test is really helpful at exposing. It's actually, this is not a kind of 6-month process. This is years of what this has kind of done to our bodies. And I think sometimes when we can see it in black and white, and I know that probably helped you.
Definitely. Although it was a little bit overwhelming. It was a relief because like a lot of people, I presumed it was my HRT. I presumed it was because I was menopausal. That's why I wasn't sleeping. That's why I was a little bit of hair loss. That's why I had a little bit of belly fat, all that kind of stuff. I just assumed, I've hit menopause. And I tried HRT with a doctor, and then I went to a specialist, and it is a little bit more expensive, but they did the same thing. Let's try this, let's try that, let's try this. So it was like, although what you told me was like, oh my God, there's so much going on, it was a relief to actually know what it was and to know how to address it.
Yes. I think on one of the things you mentioned there about the HRT, I think often I see people that don't take enough progesterone.
Yeah.
And progesterone is our chill hormone, and it helps us make GABA, which is that kind of chill out hormone in our brain, and can be really helpful. And so I think often women can feel in midlife, whether or not that's cortisol or their progesterone's low, that they can feel really overwhelmed. And that kind of wake you up in the middle of the night with a really active brain switching straight on.
Yeah.
And so that can be either of those cortisol or progesterone or a combination. And so sometimes, I think we also said to you to try and up the progesterone too, right?
Yeah.
And do you think that's helped?
Well, it's interesting. Okay, so how long ago was it? About 4 or 5 weeks ago that we actually got the results back, and then I ordered the vitamins and the hormone supplements that you suggested. In that time period, I have had very stressful transactions go on in my estate agency, really, really stressful, causing me all sorts of problems, right? So my stress levels peaked right back up. But underlying was a better sense of the fact that I was feeling better because I was eating better. Predominantly, actually, full fat rather than low fat or no fat, fat free. But it isn't until those two transactions happened last week that I've actually gone, oh, yeah. And to be honest, it's kind of almost like a collapse. And you did tell me that one of the things I was going to take was actually would slow down my need to pursue, drive, and that I might actually struggle with the fact that I wasn't actually as driven as I am. I think that's probably happened too, which is not a bad thing because you said to me, you know, I've been living years in this fight or flight adrenaline junkie mode, and it doesn't suit me. It doesn't suit anybody, but it doesn't suit.
Yeah, and I think actually some of us quite like that buzz of like living like that, but after a while it does wear out.
Yeah.
And actually I think we mentioned before, so my 18-year-old daughter has a similar profile. Oh, luckily, obviously, when you're 18, your recovery is a bit quicker than it is as we get older. But some of the stuff we've done with her, she's in the middle of her A levels at the moment. She said, "Mum, I can't be doing this because I can't be turning down my drive and I can't be going into chill out mode. Let's have to stop, and I'm going to do this again when she finishes." But you know, this is why the Dutch test is so useful, because I assumed with my 18-year-old, I thought I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And then when I looked at her cortisol was 500% too high.
Wow,
and so this was then impacting her other hormones, because understandably, if we're in fight or flight, that's what your body's prioritizing, right? So you're being chased by a lion, and that's all. You're not worrying about reproducing or making the other hormones.
Or whether we're happy.
No, forget that.
Run.
Just run.
Yeah.
So that's my little project for her over the summer.
Yeah.
But I'm pleased with all the things that you've done.
Yeah.
And let's hope that once you're through this more stressful period, you can learn to live with it.
Yeah,
children.
Absolutely. It's a strange place to like force myself to be driven, but I don't want to be feeling that way anymore, because I have reached that burnout thing where I just need to sleep. So the fact that I'm feeling, although the sleep patterns are not brilliant yet, but we're only 4 or 5 weeks in, and you did say to me 3 to 6 months, I do feel that some nights they're much better than they used to be, which is fantastic.
That's great.
And I know I'm not alone, am I, in the cortisol thing?
No.
Because a lot of women, I understand, present with this: I'm not sleeping, I've got hair loss, I've got weight gain around my tummy, and think it's HRT or think it's hormone related, and then I
mean, there are a number of changes that happen in midlife.
Yeah.
One, as our estrogen does drop, we become much less resilient to stress. So we do get more affected by that cortisol.
Okay.
The other thing is that we have cortisol receptors around our organs, so on our visceral fat. So we do the visceral fats that are around your middle. That does, if you've got a high cortisol, you are more likely to put fat on there. So that is true. There are situations, though, in midlife where if your estrogen is really low, your body fat actually makes estrogen for you, which sounds great, but that is why sometimes you will put on fat, because your body needs the estrogen. So if you're not taking HRT, I often say get some advice, because it's not I've put on fat, therefore I must need HRT.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say they're necessarily linked. But the other thing is that actually if we are using our fat cells to make estrogen, it's not that lovely, healthy estrogen we want. It's the less helpful estrogen. So there are other things going on. So our muscle mass changes, our cholesterol changes.
Yeah.
All these things happen in midlife. So actually living like we used to doesn't really work anymore. And so sometimes getting some advice of like listening to your own body and working out what works for you, because it might not work anymore. That used to how you ate in your 30s.
No.
But also that sort of stress, it's really interesting. I've actually just started working with a company CEO who has had a really stressful 5 years.
Male or female?
Male. And he has been a super high achiever, but came to me because he has been to his doctor, because he got to a point where he was like, I can't do anything anymore.
Yeah.
Finding that he was sitting in meetings and not really caring what happened.
Zoning out,
not being able to focus, then delegating, then being cross that the people weren't doing what he wanted in a level. And it was I mean, we haven't got his results yet, but I'm assuming it is long-term high stress that has done exactly what happened to you, that after long-term, I mean, I think he may be a bit further on, he's now got quite low cortisol.
Right.
So he's also not looked after his health great. So I think he's got some blood sugar issues, fatty liver disease, all sorts of other things going on as well. But said, I just can't continue like this. And he really he's trying to sell the company.
Right.
So actually how we're going to kind of tackle that, but without adding another thing to the to-do list. Because I know that's what we wanted to make sure. We want to find ways that you can incorporate some of the suggestions without thinking, oh, crikey, how am I ever going to get all that done?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm really keen about, working with high performers who need some help, but at the same time, they don't want it to be too time consuming.
No. And there's so much out there, isn't there? If you start looking, then of course social media will just throw things at you repeatedly, and you do this, it's going to be good for you. If you do that, it's going to be good for you. You just say, oh my God, I don't know what to do. So, and the first thing, as we said, is HRT, which most women do try and tackle because it makes perfect sense. It didn't even occur to me that I might be burnt out and that my cortisol levels might be high, and that might be the reason why I was not, my body's not performing. It didn't even occur to me. Oh, of course, nutrition. But then if you look at the newspapers, one week there's something on you should eat this. The next week is something on you should eat this. And if you look at health and fitness, one week it says you should run. The next week it says you should cycle. And the next week it says you do yoga. It's just so much that you just completely overwhelmed. And if you did everything that everybody suggested, there'd be no time to work.
No. And I think one of the things is on the exercise front is important to recognise, and I'm guilty like you are, where I quite like the HIIT sessions and those things. And if you're someone who is quite a high, kind of alpha-y person, you're used to that.
Yeah.
So actually, and you know that going and doing a high intensity session makes you feel a bit more alive afterwards. Happy days. But actually, what we now are realising that increases your cortisol, which can end up really dropping it later in the day, or can keep you kind of high all the time. And high cortisol also impacts your thyroid, impacts all your other hormones, obviously impacts, we're talking about your brain and sleep and energy. But actually, I think there is some real benefits for strength training for women, actually, and men, because strength training for men really helps keep their testosterone up. And a lot of men lose their testosterone in their 50s, which can really help, or kind of can hinder their sort of decision making. So actually maintaining that testosterone in men is also important, and strength training helps that too.
Yeah, it does. So have you got any success stories that you worked, people that you've worked with who've lost weight, whose hair's grown back, who's living a better life, or who managed to change their lives to the point?
Yeah, in fact, I actually had a message from a lady that I worked with, did actually 8 weeks with last year, earlier in the year. And she just said, I wanted to let you know that actually I continue all your guidance because it's been easy, and she's now lost 1.5 stones and her energy's better and all that sort of stuff. So I think for me, it's not about you work with me for 8 weeks or 12 weeks and then you're done, because what I'm trying to do is introduce some ways that you can keep going forever, that are just a new way of you to eat, but also how you feed your family. And I don't want to be, I certainly wouldn't want to be cooking 2 different meals in the evenings.
No.
So it's about, how you can make a family meal at the same time and everyone gets what they need. But it's important, I think, about having a routine that works for you. So I've had quite a few interesting people, and often I send people back to their GP about their HRT, because that's why I'm called the Hormone Geek, because I'm a real geek when it comes to hormones.
Okay.
And I often think that we are given a bit too much estrogen in this country and probably not enough progesterone. And often getting that progesterone right can be really helpful for women. And that kind of reducing that overwhelm and that busy mind and all that, that struggling to switch off, that can really help.
Yeah, I agree, because it's the busy mind, isn't it? That's a lot of people. But a lot of people, as you say, are presenting with all those symptoms which don't necessarily are not being addressed by the GP, mainly because they don't have the time, I would imagine, then to get this done. So when I came to you, I didn't necessarily want to do a whole load of changes, because as you mentioned, you want to make it easy, but actually, so we introduce things really quite slowly. So things like, which is all around my sleep, as everybody knows, I don't sleep, or didn't sleep, I'm getting better, but it's things like get up in the morning and get outside. And then eat something before you do any exercise, because you used to get up, have a cup of coffee, then do some exercise.
Yeah.
That's a killer, isn't it?
Yep.
So there's a lovely, lovely smoothie that I make.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Which I now take outside with me, drink, then I do exercise, then I have a coffee.
Fantastic.
Because you said the coffee on top of an empty stomach is not good.
Well, so we have this natural cortisol awakening response, which we tested for you, which is part of the Dutch test. And ideally, our cortisol should, from waking for the first hour, kind of increase. And some people struggle with that because their cortisol starts increasing in the night to help you wake up. And if your cortisol was too high when you went to bed, it can wake you at 3 o'clock in the morning because as you start picking up. So one thing is, if we can let that natural cortisol awakening response happen for that first hour, it's much better than sticking a coffee in, which is automatically going to increase your cortisol. So we want that natural awakening. The other thing is about the daylight. I think a lot of people, if your first thing you see is blue light, as in you pick up your phone, your body is going to crave that blue light all day.
Yeah.
If you can have natural light, it really helps you with your production of serotonin, which is your feel-good, your happy hormone, and it's also going to help you with your melatonin, which is what we need later on.
Yeah.
So melatonin as well. So at the other end of the day, having the lights dim, not looking at your phone late, that is all ways of increasing that natural melatonin. I don't know, what's your evening routine like?
So, so my evening routine used to be, phone until bedtime type thing, whilst watching the TV and maybe doing a bit of work. And I wasn't really aware of what the lights were doing, but you introduced something which is very simple: is turn the lights down a bit so that your body starts to recognize the fact that you will be going to sleep. Stop the phone, which most evenings I'm good at, just leave it away from where I'm sitting in the evening. The thing that I struggle with is that you did say try to eat between, by about 7 o'clock. But of course, work and going to the gym doesn't always happen. So I do try it. I mean, I eat as soon as I can and I stop eating, so I don't munch throughout the evening. So those are different habits which are working well for me as well. The other thing that you did ask me to do was to go out and do 8,000 steps a day. That's an interesting challenge because it takes so long.
Oh yeah, I know.
It's like get up, do the exercise, and go out and do 8,000 steps, except when it's raining.
Yeah, I mean, that's easier if you've got a dog, which you've got to do it anyway.
Absolutely.
And actually, I'm probably guilty of not always achieving that one. The amount of time I walk around the kitchen now, I'm sure I'm getting quite a lot of steps.
Yeah, no, I actually have timed steps, counted the steps out to the end of the drive and back. So how many times I'd have to do that? You might have to do work whilst doing it. So I could do that, but it's, for me, it doesn't necessarily mean that I've got to do 8,000 steps in one go. It's just actually the active thing of getting out and doing the steps. So today I've only done about 4,000, but it's the part of the habit. And it's also what I have noticed is that it kind of just reduces my level of stress because I don't look at the phone. So I've got the phone in my pocket, in my thigh pocket, counting the steps, but I don't look at the phone. So I just kind of take that stress off and actually give myself some time in nature, which is reducing some of the stress levels as well.
One of the bonuses actually of our longer days at the moment in the summer is the going for a light wander after dinner.
Yeah.
Because that's really helpful at controlling our blood sugar. And actually, if you're moving your muscles, the sugar will go more easily into those muscles, and it will really could potentially help sleep as well. And actually getting into that habit of having a little wander around after dinner. And actually, I even was saying to someone the other day, getting straight up after dinner and doing the washing up and clearing the kitchen, even though none of us want to do that, is a really good way of also reducing that blood sugar spike from your meal. So actually moving around afterwards can be quite helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So the things that you've introduced are quite easy to get into, as you say, into your life. And you're not spending the whole day trying to map out a pattern that just doesn't fit a busy life, because otherwise I'd just give up. Yeah, I would just give up. Am I struggling with anything? Well, you said 1 cup of coffee a day. So my cup is about a bucket now, as opposed to several It's the biggest cup we've got in the cupboard, but that's one. And
Excellent.
so again, not drinking Diet Coke. That is a challenge, and occasionally I do have a Diet Coke.
And what's the catalyst for the Diet Coke for you? What is it that
So
makes
what
you
it
want
does, actually, what it does is when I think I want sugar at the end of the meal, because I don't.
Okay.
I'm a '60s child, okay, and we always had pudding. You know, we always had like I don't know what it was. It was an Angel Delight or something horrible like that. But we always had some kind of pudding growing up. So therefore, the habit of needing a sweet at something at the end of a meal is something that I still hanker for. So the Diet Coke does that. Psychologically, I know it's really bad for the system and doesn't actually help the sugar levels, but I don't do it every day.
And is it lunch or dinner that happens, or is it both?
Well, I try. No, it's always lunch. I won't drink a Diet Coke anyway in the evening because of the caffeine. So I won't
So
do that.
some of the new research coming out about that, a lot of people have a fancying something sweet after lunch. So there's two things. One, maybe there's not enough protein in lunch.
Okay.
You might be dealing with that. And secondly, there might not have been enough texture in your lunch.
Interesting.
So supposedly having lots of different textures in your lunch. So if you have something like I've just had today like a couscous. It wasn't couscous, it was grated cauliflower with pomegranate and some salmon and stuff. But it was kind of pretty much similar texture. And I know that if it had a bit more crunchy or different textures, then it's amazing how the impact that can have of not wanting something sweet. So your body is less satisfied because it hasn't had to work so hard with the textures.
Interesting, because I always muck about. I've always thought that, it's that lovely sated feeling, isn't it, of fat with salt or fat with sugar.
Yeah.
But for me, can be replaced with a bit of carb. So if I were to eat a piece of toast, Marmite, that has that same sort of like, oh yeah, I'm sated. My lunch by contrast is very similar actually. It's all very much the same texture. It's avocado with, I make this 2-egg flatbread thing with cottage cheese and some salad. So yeah, all the same. Yum, but there's no crunch in it.
Yeah. Well, maybe
maybe the crunch is.
So maybe we need a carrot on the side as well and see if that makes a difference with the Diet Coke crunch.
It's a Diet Coke crunch, absolutely.
But that's interesting, the new research, right? I mean, I think it's great that there is some of this research coming out. But
definitely. But so the Diet, why am I not allowed a Diet Coke again? Remind
me. There's a lot of chemicals in there.
Yeah.
But also it's about the fact that it tells your brain that, tells your brain that something sweet's coming, and then the sweet doesn't come because it's obviously you don't get the same impact on your blood sugar, so the glucose is missing, and then often people crave something sweet after that.
Right.
Obviously, if that doesn't happen to you, then great. But a lot of people end up drinking a lot of these diet drinks, and then end up an hour later thinking that they need a biscuit because their brain is going, I didn't get the sugar that you've just told me was coming.
Promised. Yeah, promised me. So, in your opinion, why do you think it's important to address these issues in mid to late life?
Good question. So I've done a little bit of research. So I go and talk to a lot of corporates. One of the recent events they asked me to come and talk about is like longevity and what impact midlife health makes to your long-term outlook. And in this country, women outlive men.
Right.
Which we all know.
Yeah.
But actually, women live with poor health longer than men.
Wow.
And actually, women spend 25% of their life living with ill health. Scary. 21% for men. And actually, I think a lot of people underestimate the decisions they make in their 40s and 50s about what impact that is going to have on their longevity. So it's not about, for me, it's not about my lifespan, it's my health span. I don't want to live till 90, but spend the last 10 years of my life sitting in an armchair.
Actually, it's longer than that.
25%.
It's 20 odd years.
So on average, women get diagnosed with their first illness in their early 60s. It's not going to be you because myself. But actually, I think the problem is if we don't, a lot of things you can reverse.
Yeah.
But if I'm working with a couple of people at the moment who've both pre-diabetic, who've got fatty liver disease. And fatty liver disease is a massive epidemic in this country. And most of us don't know we've got it.
So is that caused by overeating sugar?
Not just sugar, but basically when you eat anything, you've got to break it into glucose because that's the fuel source that your body uses. And if you don't need all that glucose, what we do is we store it in our liver, and we store it as something called glycogen. And what happens is if we keep storing it in our liver gets bigger, so it becomes fatty.
Yeah.
But also what happens is that we lose this, it's called metabolic flexibility. So what we should be able to do when we were cavemen is if we were hungry, our bodies go, well, that's fine. I've got some stored glucose in my liver. But unfortunately, the way we all eat and snack and everything else, we never access that stored glucose in our liver. So I think it's like 70% of midlife people have some beginning of fatty
And you
liver
said
disease.
it goes undiagnosed.
Goes undiagnosed.
So how do you diagnose it?
Well, you can get it
I'm
diagnosed.
panicking now.
No. Well, actually, if you go to your GP and you have like a full blood, then they'll pick it up. So you'll have some markers in your liver.
Yeah.
But often the doctor won't even point that out, because I've just seen a client's bloods and I could see they've got fatty liver disease, but their GP
Didn't point
mention
it
it.
out. Not.
Or you would have it from an ultrasound, and that's really obvious to see. And actually, often, if women will maybe have an ultrasound looking at their kind of ovarian health or their uterine health, and actually, what you can say is, "Could you just have a little look at my liver while you're there?" Because I recently had one of those scans, and actually, the doctor said to me, "Oh, you're in the minority because most women we scan at 52 have fatty liver disease." Yeah.
Wow. You know what I'm going to do next, don't you?
Go and have a scan. That just then means that other things are different. Our liver becomes harder to process all the toxins that that are in the atmosphere, in our foods and the chemicals, and then alcohol, and all these things. I don't want to kind of suck all the joy out of life, but it's about how you can find Monday to Thursday, eating well, looking after yourself, making sure you're getting enough fiber, getting that protein in, so that actually you're going to have a long, healthy life, which I think is really important.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Most people don't want to live to be a ripe old age, because the ripe old age means that they'll be sitting in a chair, unable to get up, unable to do anything for themselves, and dribbling. And that's just not something that anybody wants to do. So age 40 onwards, you can put, you can start.
And you can reverse so many of these diseases.
Can you? Just by addressing your nutrition.
Yeah. You can reverse, you can even reverse type 2 diabetes now, but pre-diabetes, I think there's a lot of us out there with, there's various stages. Diabetes doesn't come overnight. It's a long process, but also dementia, that is really impacted by our lifestyle and our diet.
So that can be reversed, or can be...
Well, and there are things that you can do to reduce your chance of having dementia. And in fact, some doctors these days are suggesting we call it type 3 diabetes, because it is so impacted by that up and down of blood sugar.
Right.
Because that actually we've all had that, where your blood sugar drops really low, you can't concentrate, you're hangry, and that impact on your brain, because our brain is the biggest user of glucose. And so actually, if you can keep your blood sugar balanced, and that's not eating all the time, that's just not having those massive highs and lows, is much healthier for our brains.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So addressing it earlier in life is the best thing you could do. But if you have, but even if you're 50, 60, doing something now will help your health
definitely
later on in life. So if anybody wants to get hold of you, Kate, how do they do that?
Well, you can find me on Instagram as the Hormone Geek, or my website is
The Hormone Geek?
www.thehormonegeek.co.uk. And actually you can book in with me for like a 15-minute call and just have a chat about what you're looking to achieve, and whether or not that's the hormone testing. Sometimes I think, which we didn't do with you, but we probably should have done, is actually once you get those results, actually having a bit more ongoing support, because I think for all of us, it can be a bit overwhelming, and actually having someone in your camp that find a plan for you and checks in with you and sees how you're getting on. I think we all
I've just had to check in. So
yeah.
But actually, to be honest, you did do. I mean, the Dutch report was 38 pages.
Yeah.
And then your report after the Dutch report was 5 pages. So I don't feel that I haven't got the support. And we did say we would check in again. So, but I highly recommend getting in touch with Kate and actually taking up the opportunity to have a look at your health and to look at your hormones and your nutrition in depth, because it is really, really helpful.
Thank you, Jo.
You're very welcome. Is there anything I've missed out?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed it.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.